This week we will be reading a story titled Freckle Juice by Judy Blume. Andrew Marcus wanted freckles. Let's look at the word freckles. Okay, freckles are brown little dots, usually around your nose, cheeks, and neck. And I know the picture's not in color, but if you look right here on Nikki Lane's face, those little dots there are freckles. He had about 1,000,000 of them. They covered his face, his ears, and the back of his neck. Andrew didn't have any freckles. He had 2 warts on his finger, but they didn't do him any good at all. If he had freckles like Nikki, his mother would never know if his neck was dirty, so he wouldn't have to wash. And then he'd never be late for school. Andrew had plenty of time to look at Nikki's freckles. He sat right behind him in class. Once he even tried to count them, but when he got to 86, Miss Kelly called, "Andrew, are you paying attention?" "Yes, Miss Kelly," Andrew said. "Good, Andrew. I'm glad to hear that. Now, will you please pick up your chair and join your reading group? We're all waiting for you." Andrew stood up in a hurry. His reading group giggled, especially Sharon. He couldn't stand that Sharon. She thought she knew everything. He picked up his chair and carried it to the corner where his reading group sat. "You may begin, Andrew," Miss Kelly said. "Page 64. Andrew turned the pages in his book. 64, 64. He couldn't find it. The pages stuck together. Why did Miss Kelly have to pick him? Everybody else already had their books open to the right page. Sharon kept giggling. She covered her mouth to keep in the noise, but Andrew knew what was going on. He finally found page 64, right where it was supposed to be, between pages 63 and 65. If he had his own freckles, he wouldn't have to count Nikki Lane's. Then he'd hear Miss Kelly when she called reading groups, and nobody would laugh at him. Later, when the bell rang, Andrew poked Nikki Lane. Let's look at the word poked. Okay, poked means when you jab or nudge someone or something, and you usually do it with your finger. So it gets kind of annoying to people because you might take your finger and poke at their arm, and that really bothers people. "What do you want?" Nikki asked, turning around. "I was wondering about your freckles," Andrew said. "Oh yeah? What about them?" Andrew felt pretty stupid. "Well, how did you get them?" "What do you mean, how? You get born with them, that's how." Andrew thought that's what Nikki would say. Some help he was. "Line up, boys and girls," Miss Kelly said. "Time to go home now. Sharon, you may lead the girls. Andrew, you may lead the boys." Some luck. Just when he got to be leader, he had to stand next to Sharon. When they were in line, Sharon whispered to Andrew, "Psst, I know how to get them." "How to get what?" Andrew asked. "Freckles," Sharon said. "Who asked you?" "I heard you ask Nikki about his." Sharon ran her tongue along her teeth. She was always doing that. "Do you want to know how to get them?" Sharon asked. "Maybe," Andrew told her. "It'll cost you 50 cents. I have a secret recipe for Freckle Juice," Sharon whispered. "A secret recipe?" "Uh-huh." Sharon's tongue reminded Andrew of a frog catching flies. He wondered if Sharon ever got a mouthful of bugs the way she opened her mouth and wiggled her tongue around. Andrew inspected Sharon's face. "You don't even have freckles," he said. Let's look at the word inspected. Okay, inspected means when you look at something very carefully. "Look close," Sharon said. "I've got 6 on my nose." "Big deal. A lot of good 6'll do." "You could get as many as you want. 6 was enough for me. It all depends on how much freckle juice you drink." Andrew didn't believe Sharon for a minute. Not 1 minute. There was no such thing as freckle juice. Andrew had never heard of it before. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 1. I want to go over a couple things in the chapter. First of all, I want to look at the main characters. Okay, we had Andrew, who's a main character. He's who the story is all about. We had Nikki, who's the one who had all the freckles. We have Miss Kelly, the teacher. We have Sharon, who seems to be a bit of a bossy girl who knows everything. We have a problem in this story. The problem is that Nikki wants freckles. Okay, that's the problem. We're going to read to find out what his solution will end up being as we read each chapter. We also want to take a look at the setting of the story. As of right now, in chapter 1, okay, only in chapter 1, the setting seems to be school. That's where the story is taking place. They are in Andrew's school. You are going to answer some questions about the vocabulary words freckles, poked, and inspected. You're also going to answer some questions on the chapter. We are not focusing all our questions on story elements this week, like main characters, problem, setting, solution, but we are going to have at least one question for each chapter about one of those story elements that you see in stories. So make sure you're paying attention to the characters, the problem, the solution, the setting, and all those important things that you want to look at as you read. Okay, good luck and go answer your questions.